Welcome to Faith in Every Step, a space where real stories meet unshakable faith. If this message stirs your heart, please like, subscribe, and share, because someone out there may need this reminder right now. A young woman from India, faithful, hopeful, full of dreams, stood between love and obedience. Her heart belonged to a boy she'd known for 4 years, but her parents said no. They had other plans, a proposal from a man in the United States. She wept as she watched the life she imagined slip through her fingers. But out of honor and faith, she said yes to a path she did not choose. When she arrived in America, the promise of a new life quickly became a prison. Her husband's words cut deeper than blades. The abuse was not just physical, it was emotional, spiritual, suffocating. Yet every Sunday she was there, in church, hands lifted, eyes closed, tears streaming. She prayed, "God, why? I did everything right. I obeyed. I believed." But heaven was silent. Sometimes faith feels like a one-sided conversation, where you speak, and the only reply is the sound of your own heartbeat. She held on for her children, telling herself that enduring pain was a form of love. Every night she prayed for change, for peace, for God to show up. But years passed, and the walls grew thicker. Well, until one night, the pain was too loud to bear. She tried to end her life, yet God intervened. Through hands, through timing, through a miracle no one could explain. She was saved, and in that moment, broken and breathing, she heard it. A whisper, "I'm not done with you yet." It's in the depth of our despair that faith is most real. Patience isn't waiting for life to get better. It's trusting God when it doesn't. Sometimes He lets what we cling to break so that He can build something that lasts. Like Joseph in the pit, like David in the caves, like this woman in her room of shattered hope. God was not punishing her, He was preserving her. Because faith is not proven on the mountain, it's forged in the valley. She chose to live, not because the pain vanished, but because she believed. Somehow, there was more. 4 years would pass before God would begin to unfold the rest of her story, a story she never saw coming. So if you're in a season where you don't understand the why, remember this: you don't need to see the plan to trust the planner. The years that followed were quiet and heavy. 4 years into her marriage, the silence in her heart had grown louder than any argument. She had prayed, she had pleaded, yet the house that should have been filled with love echoed with anger and fear. Every bruise, every harsh word carved a question deeper into her soul. God, are you even here? She didn't tell many people. In church, she smiled, she volunteered, she sang hymns with her children beside her. 2 little lights that gave her reason to wake up every morning. But inside, she was breaking. She would come home, close the bathroom door, and cry when no one could see. She didn't want pity, she wanted peace. And still, every Sunday, she showed up. Not because life was easy, but because she needed to believe that somehow her faith would hold. Sometimes storms don't stop when you pray. They stop when they've changed you. She didn't realize it then, but God was growing something deep. Endurance, compassion, the ability to stand when the world crumbled. Patience wasn't a lesson she asked for, but one she was being shaped by. Like the disciples in the boat during the storm, she didn't understand why Jesus seemed to be sleeping. But faith is often found not in calm seas, but in surviving the waves. Years went by, the abuse didn't end, but her prayers changed. No longer why me, but God, help me see you in this. That shift, that small surrender, was the start of her healing. Because faith under pressure doesn't mean pretending everything's fine. It means believing that, even when everything is falling apart, God is still who He says He is. One night, the storm reached its peak, the anger turned violent again, and in a moment of desperation, she made a choice she thought she'd never make, to end her own life. But God wasn't done. Someone arrived, someone knocked, someone called. It wasn't coincidence, it was grace on time. She woke up in a hospital, alive, shaken, trembling, but alive. And in that fragile space between pain and peace, she whispered through tears, "Lord, if you're giving me another chance, I'll live it differently." That moment marked the turning of her story, though she didn't know it yet. The waiting wasn't over, but for the first time she was learning to wait with God, not just on Him. Faith was no longer about answers, it was about presence. Her life didn't get easier overnight, but she rose again, for her children, for her faith, and for the belief that maybe, just maybe, God was writing something that pain couldn't erase. After the storm came silence. No shouting, no bruises, no fear, just a woman and her 2 children standing in the ruins of what once was. The divorce papers were signed. The house that once echoed with pain was now quiet. She should have felt free, but she didn't. Freedom, it turns out, can feel lonely when you've spent years surviving someone else's storm. She worked long hours to keep the lights on. She cooked simple meals, packed lunches, helped with homework. Her joy was in her children's laughter. But when they went to sleep, The night stretched long and empty. Sometimes she'd sit by the window, watching the streetlights flicker, and whisper, "God, I did what you asked. I held on. I waited. But what now?" And again, silence. But here's the truth no one tells you. God's silence isn't rejection, it's preparation. Those 4 years became her wilderness, not punishment, but process. Like Moses in Midian, like Joseph in prison, like David tending sheep before the throne. God wasn't done. He was working underground. In her patience, in her character, in the quiet faith that learns to trust without seeing. Each Sunday she still went to church. She didn't always sing. Sometimes she just stood there, listening, breathing, trying to believe. And slowly, faith began to sound less like shouting for answers and more like whispering. Even now, I trust you. Those years refined her. She learned to pray not for escape, but for endurance. She learned that strength doesn't come from the absence of pain. It comes from walking through it with God by your side. And she began to discover something holy about waiting. The kind of waiting that doesn't demand results, but simply says, "I'm still here, Lord." One day, she received a message from someone she hadn't spoken to in over a decade, her first love. The young man she'd been told to leave behind. He had never married. He never forgot her. What started as a simple conversation became a bridge between two unfinished stories. And in that moment, she realized what she thought was the end was only a pause. Because when God writes your story, even detours lead to destiny. So if you're listening right now, in your own season of silence, don't mistake waiting for wasting. God's timeline may not match yours, but his purpose never fails. She didn't know it yet, but the waiting was about to end. And what came next would be proof that God can redeem even the years the locusts have eaten. 4 years had passed since she last felt her heart come alive. And then, one message. It wasn't dramatic or poetic, just a few words from the man she had loved long ago, the one she was told to forget, the one she never really stopped praying for, even when she tried to convince herself she had moved on. He had never married. He had built a quiet life, filled with work and service, but never love. And now, after so many years, he reached out, just to ask how she was doing. But what began as a simple exchange soon felt like something holy. Not romantic at first, sacred, like God was gently stitching together two hearts that had once been torn apart by timing. Every conversation brought healing. They spoke not as strangers, but as people who had been through fire and found their faith still intact. She told him about her pain, her children, her scars. He listened, not to fix her, but to understand. He had stories of his own, of loneliness, of waiting, of asking God the same questions she had once whispered through tears. Why did you let this happen? And then it hit her. All those years she thought she was forgotten. God had been preparing not just her, but him too. The waiting wasn't punishment, it was alignment. When they met again, after all those years, it was like time had bowed to destiny. There were no fireworks, no grand gestures, just peace. That quiet kind of peace that only comes when something or someone fits perfectly into God's plan. He loved her children as his own. He became the calm after her storm, the answered prayer that once seemed impossible. And when they married, she thought, finally, this is the ending I waited for. But God wasn't writing a fairy tale. He was writing a testimony. Because the truth is, even when blessings come, life can still break again. And soon, her faith would face the hardest test of all. But before that, there was joy. There were laughter-filled mornings, prayers around the dinner table, a baby girl who filled their home with light. They called her their miracle, proof that God redeems what pain destroys. Every night, she would tuck her children in, glance at her husband beside her, and whisper, "Thank you, Lord, I understand now. You were never late." And if the story ended there, we'd all call it perfect. But faith isn't about perfect endings. It's about trusting when the ending breaks again. Because soon, one ordinary night would change everything again. It was an ordinary night. Dinner dishes still on the counter. The laughter of their baby girl fading into sleep. He had kissed her goodnight. The same quiet tenderness that made her feel safe, even after everything she'd endured. And then, sometime between midnight and dawn, the peace shattered. She woke up to silence. Not the peaceful kind, the heavy kind, the kind that feels wrong. She reached out, and he wasn't breathing. "Wake up," she whispered, then louder, then screaming. No response. She called for help. The ambulance came. Neighbors stood outside, whispering prayers. Her children clung to her, confused and terrified. But in her heart, she already knew. The man who had waited for her, the one who made her believe in love again, the one she thought God had finally sent to restore what was lost, was gone. Doctors tried, machines hummed, but the verdict was final. Brain dead. She stood beside his hospital bed, staring at the stillness. Her tears soaked the edge of the sheet as she whispered, "God, not again. Please, not again." And in that moment, it felt like her whole world had collapsed for the second time. The faith she had rebuilt began to tremble. She had done everything right. She had waited. She had trusted. And this was the result. But somewhere beneath the heartbreak, in the darkest valley of her life, she felt something. Not loud, not clear, but present. A whisper. Even here, I am still God. And that whisper kept her from breaking completely. In the days that followed, she walked through fog, holding her baby girl, explaining to her older children what no mother ever wants to explain. And yet, somehow, she kept moving. Not because she had strength, but because grace carried her. People told her she was strong, but she knew better. She wasn't strong, she was sustained. She still went to church, though the songs made her cry. She still prayed, though the answers didn't come. She still believed, even when it didn't make sense. Because faith isn't proven on the mountaintop, it's proven in the valley. The kind that steals your breath and leaves you with nothing but God. So if you're listening right now, if you've lost something or someone and can't understand why, know this: God doesn't waste pain. He redeems it, rewrites it, and one day reveals why the breaking had to happen. She didn't know it then, but this loss would become the foundation of her purpose. The story that would touch countless others walking through their own midnight hour. Because sometimes, the night that changes everything is the one that leads you back to the one who never changes. The days after the funeral felt unreal. People came and went, bringing food, flowers, condolences. She smiled politely, thanked them, then closed the door and broke all over again. There's a kind of silence after loss that even prayer can't fill. It's not that God stops speaking, it's that your heart forgets how to listen. She'd sit on the floor at night, surrounded by memories, his watch, his Bible, the baby's toys, and whisper, "God, I don't understand. Why give me peace only to take it away?" But in that sacred ache, something began to shift. She realized faith doesn't mean never asking why. It means holding on even while you're asking. And she did. She got up every morning, made breakfast for her kids, went to work, came home, prayed. Even when the tears fell mid-sentence, she prayed. Because she had learned through every heartbreak that God was not a rescuer from pain, but a redeemer through it. Some nights she still talked to her husband, not out of disbelief, but remembrance. She'd whisper, "We did it right this time. We waited. We loved well. I'll carry that love for both of us." And each time she'd feel that same quiet whisper she had once felt in her darkest valley. Even here, I am still God. Slowly, she began to see her pain differently. It wasn't punishment, but it was purpose forming. Every scar was now a story, every tear, a testimony. She began sharing bits of her journey, at church, online, with women walking through their own silent battles. And her words carried weight, not because they were perfect, but because they were real. One night, she sat in her living room, baby asleep, house quiet, and she opened her Bible. It fell open to Isaiah 61:3. To give them beauty for ashes, the oil of joy for mourning, the garment of praise for the spirit of heaviness. She read it aloud, and for the first time, she believed it wasn't just for others, it was for her. Her story was no longer about survival, it was about surrender. It was about the kind of faith that doesn't fade when life breaks again. And maybe that's where true patience is found. Not in waiting for things to go right, but in trusting God when everything still feels wrong. She didn't have all the answers. She still cried some nights, but she was different now. Her waiting had become worship. Her pain had become her pulpit. And if you're listening right now, maybe standing where she once stood, please know this. God is still writing your story. Even when the pages are soaked with tears, His hand has never left the pen. Grief never truly leaves. It softens, reshapes, and sometimes it blooms. For her, healing didn't arrive all at once. It came in quiet moments. Her daughter's laughter, her son's prayers, the smell of morning coffee, the sunlight sneaking through the blinds. It came in realizing that life could still hold beauty, even after everything had burned. Isaiah 61:3 kept echoing in her heart, to bestow on them a crown of beauty instead of ashes. She used to think that verse meant everything would be replaced, that God would give her something new for everything she lost. But now she understood. It wasn't about replacing, it was about redeeming. God wasn't erasing her scars, He was transforming them into something sacred. One day, her pastor asked if she would share her story at church. She hesitated. Her voice trembled just at the thought. But that night she prayed, "Lord, if my pain can help someone else believe again, then use it." And so she did. She stood in front of that congregation, hands shaking, eyes filled with tears, and told them everything about the marriage that broke her, the faith that sustained her, the miracle love that restored her, and the heartbreak that almost destroyed her again, but also about the peace that found her in the ashes. When she finished, the room was silent, not because they didn't know what to say, but because they could feel it, the power of a life surrendered. Afterward, one woman came up to her, Brian, and said, I was going to give up on God, but your story reminded me He's still here. And that was it. That was the moment she understood why God had let her live through so much. Her life had become her ministry, her suffering, her sermon, her scars, her strength. She began writing, speaking, encouraging others who walked through their own valleys, and with every story she told, every tear she wiped, she could feel the same truth taking root again. That beauty doesn't come after the ashes, it grows from within them. If you're watching this right now, maybe you've lost something too. Someone, some dream, some version of your life you thought you'd always have, and maybe you're standing in the smoke, wondering if anything beautiful could ever come out of it. Listen, God is not done. He is still the God who makes gardens bloom from graves. He still trades ashes for beauty, mourning for dancing, despair for praise. You may not see it yet, but your story is becoming someone else's miracle. She no longer asked, "Why me?" Now, she whispered, "Thank you for trusting me with this story." Because sometimes, the greatest testimony isn't the life you planned, it's the one God rebuilds from what you thought was ruined. Years had passed, the house felt different now. Still quiet, but not empty. There was peace in the air. Not the kind that forgets pain, but the kind that has learned to live with it. Her baby girl was growing, her boys were thriving, and somewhere between the busyness and the stillness, she realized she was no longer surviving, she was living. She began to see God's fingerprints in every chapter of her life, even the ones she once begged Him to erase. The broken marriage had taught her strength. The waiting had taught her patience. The love she lost had taught her that joy can still return after sorrow. And the heartbreak that nearly destroyed her had built her into a woman of unshakable faith. She had walked through the fire and come out refined. And now, she wasn't asking, "Why me?" anymore. She was asking, "Lord, how can you use me?" That's when the calling came, not in a voice from heaven, but in the quiet nudging of her heart. She started sharing her story, not for attention, but for healing. At first, just with friends, then with strangers, then online, to thousands who saw themselves in her journey. Her message was simple, but it carried power. Even when life breaks you, God is still building something beautiful. People began to reach out, widows, single mothers, men who'd lost everything, young people wrestling with faith. They all said the same thing, "Your story gave me hope." And she realized this was her purpose. This was why she was still here. Not to have a perfect life, but to point people to a perfect God. Sometimes God's greatest miracles aren't the things He gives back. They're the hearts He rebuilds along the way. Her life wasn't the one she imagined, but it was the one God intended. Full of scars that shined with His mercy. Now, every morning, before the world wakes up, she whispers her favorite verse, "Be still and know that I am God." Psalm 46:10. And with that, she steps into each day, not fearless, but faith-filled. Not because everything makes sense, but because she's finally learned to trust the one who holds it all. And maybe that's the purpose after all. Not a destination, not a happy ending, but a daily walk of surrender. So if you're listening right now and your story feels unfinished, don't give up. Don't turn away from God because of what you don't understand. He is still writing. He is still redeeming. And one day, you'll look back and realize, the valley wasn't the end of your story, it was where your purpose began. This is faith in every step, she says softly. And if this story touched your heart, please like, share, and subscribe, so together we can keep reminding the world God is still good, even in the waiting.